Hi, everyone. In this episode of the Bryan G Real Estate Podcast, today we're going to be talking about Airbnbs, Verbos, different properties like that. And to help me out with that discussion is actually a very special guest of mine, my older brother, Dave Gutierrez. How you doing, man?
Very good. How are you?
Hey, man, I'm so glad you're on here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so Dave and his wife came into town, and we were just kind of, hanging out and talking like his families do. And I'm like, man, you got to do this podcast with me and you got to sit down. We got to do this. So I kind of roped him into this. So thanks, man. I appreciate you being here.
No worries at all.
But the conversation we were having is about, Airbnb, Verbo, that kind of thing. And Dave actually has a lot of experience doing that, co-owns a business with his wife doing this. And so I thought this would be like the perfect topic to talk about. I can't tell you how many times being a real estate agent, people are asking me like, oh, Bryan, what do you think about Airbnbs and what kind of property should I get for that? Blah, blah, blah. Although I'm a residential realtor, I haven't gotten into this world yet. So actually, this is going to be very informative for me too. But yeah, I was just wondering if you just kind of talk about what those types of rentals are and, kind of what goes along with it. And I think that'd be really helpful for everyone. Yeah. Would you like to just briefly introduce yourself a little bit?
Hi, my name is David. Yeah, I've been talking to Bryan a lot about our Airbnb business that we have been doing for several years now. And I'm just glad to be able to share some, I think what are some real important tips and little tricks to doing Airbnbs, things I wouldn't do again, things I would do more of. So anyway, I can just kind of help to give you some tips.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's great. And this is really kind of a fascinating part of the real estate world.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm not very experienced in this, and so I'm really eager to kind of hear what you have to say about this stuff. And I guess a good starting point would be, what is an Airbnb or Verbo, or like how would you categorize that kind of rental real estate?
So I definitely categorize that as short-term rental. I
Hmm.
believe anything a day over 6 months is considered a long-term rental. And then I think as rentals, as relates to rentals, anytime you're a long-term versus short-term, there's a whole other set of laws and legalities and responsibilities from a lessee versus a lessor, things like that. Our specialty, we just kind of fell into the Airbnb space.
Hmm.
So in the short-term rental space, we've used, I think there's a number of tools to advertise your short-term rental. Airbnb and VRBO obviously are two very popular tools um, to put your property out there. I think they give you a lot of space to really describe down to what kind of stove you have in the kitchen. I mean,
All right.
I know in Airbnb, you can literally list everything that's in your unit. And you'd be surprised what people search for. What is that kind of trigger that makes somebody want to stay
Hmm.
in your place? I know over the years, I learned that one of the reasons why our Airbnb was so popular is because out of our whole area, our whole county, I was one of the few Airbnbs that didn't have any steps
Really?
getting into our unit, straight from the parking
Yeah,
lot.
I could see that.
Yeah. And so you'd be
Wow.
surprised how that really helped with my elderly crowd quite a bit.
Sure.
Yeah. And
Huh.
yeah, it was pretty interesting. It's something you didn't think about till you actually start getting feedback from your customers. I'd say overall with the Airbnb business, we're not super sophisticated investment people.
Hmm.
We've always looked at properties as kind of a bank, right? So if I put my money into a property, um, long story short, at the end of the day, whether I cash it out later on, I wind up getting more of a interest rate return, right, than I
Sure.
would get in any even
Yeah.
aggressive fund or anything like that. So for us, we look at a property as simply being a bank that we put our money into. Um, and the reason why we like short-term rentals is, if you can take that asset, that property, if you can have it make money for you while you have it, a number of things are happening. One is it begins to pay for itself, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
The other thing is your mortgage is going down, should you have financed it traditionally or conventionally.
Sure.
And then property value, for the most part, is always going up. So if you can hustle some kind of business inside of your property, by the time you're ready to liquidate it, you have all these factors working for you. So at the end of the day, you're making a lot more money than you would in a high yield fund of some sort. And I've always liked real estate. Unless you make some really big mistakes, I it really seems like a safe place to park your money.
Right. And, I think what you mentioned is really important because that can also be the birth of accumulating wealth,
Hmm.
right? And stability financially. It's that first step, that first investment. And I really like the other thing is that you have approached your business like a business. And that sounds really silly at first, right? I mean, it sounds like painfully obvious, but I mean, it really is true. I think a lot of people just maybe like the idea of getting involved in something.
Hmm.
I see that in real estate a lot. There's a lot of agents like, oh, I love homes. I want to sell homes. But they don't treat their business like a business, right? They don't have a P&L report that they're looking over. They don't have their time blocked, right? They don't have any structure to it, right? And I see that a lot in my world. Those of us who are dedicated full timers and professionals obviously do, but I can also see that happening kind of in that space too. Oh, I like I said, I can't tell you many people like, oh, I want to buy a house and use it as a rental,
Yeah.
and that's it, right? And is so I think that's definitely a smart way to begin is to have some kind of plan as to the amount of money you're putting out, what kind of ROI or return on your investment you want in the future, what that timeline is going to be. And I think that's also, I think for you guys individual, just knowing you has contributed to your success because then that also frees up more uh, um, assets so you can acquire more assets, right?
Yeah.
And kind of grow from there. So yeah, so like why the Airbnb? Like why not just flip properties? Like what was it about the short-term rentals that really kind of caught your eye as opposed to just like flipping homes?
So I like to equate it to the medicine that time releases inside of you, right?
Hmm.
It's with properties, especially short-term rentals. Obviously, if I have a 2-year lease, I have to honor that and wait for that 2-year lease to run up. Should I want to do something with the property? Whereas short-term rentals, it's a much smaller time frame. I can get in and out of them for repairs or renovations as I need to. But at the end of the day, I can make these properties work for myself and liquidate them in the timely fashion that works specifically for what like my wife and my needs are. So
Okay.
there's some Airbnbs. Let's say you have an Airbnb that you don't owe hardly any money for, right?
Hmm.
And it's all paid off. That's a kind of property you're probably going to hold on to longer because it's not costing you as much versus maybe part of the strategy is to let one go because you have more money into it. But the great thing is, as we get older, for instance, we have a 50-acre rental in California, and it's just exponentially getting more valuable. Um, just got a call today, another offer on it. We haven't even really put it out there for sale at all. Um, and so, that's a property we would make work for ourselves. It's just whatever money we're making with that, we're making. I mean, that's just there's no debt you're really paying against that
All right.
profitability. And then down the road, that would be one of the properties we would want to sell near the end when we're ready to not enjoy it, be done with it all the way, maybe when we're 80, 90. And I think the return on that property will be substantial. But I think how you go into an Airbnb, how you go into buying property for the short term is really important. What I think it's so specific to the person on what you want to do. There's really no one rule going into it. But I'm not sure if I answered your question.
No, 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 no. You absolutely did, and that kind of leads me to what I was going to ask you next. Is so I haven't done this before. I am thinking about purchasing my first,
Hmm.
my first little home or condo or whatever it is,
Yep.
and I want to get into this. What should I look for when I'm purchasing a property that I want to use as a short-term rental?
So that's a great question. Everyone has different strategies, as I said before, but what I would do looking into a property is how quickly can I get it into, I always say production, how quickly can I get it rented? If you paid for it in cash, full out, you have a little bit of time. You're not rushing against a bank or some
Right.
note that's wanting you. So you can take your time in maybe bringing that property more up to speed. What's There's so many ways of getting money to upgrade a property as well. There's quick loans that you can get that'll give you right off the bat 70% of the value of your house, no questions asked.
Hmm.
And so, that I think the trick in this game is if you have more than one Airbnb, it's how do you make those all play, with each other as far as an equity standpoint. But if I was looking for a place, I would want to see a couple things. One is how quickly can I get it into production, but also I I always look for uniqueness when it comes to a short-term rental, especially if I'm doing it on Airbnb or VRBO. If I just have a rental in the middle of a neighborhood, that's great. But am I near a college that always has all of these events going on? Am I
Hmm.
on the water? I always look for unique. Unique always wins in the Airbnb short-term rental business. And as you know, unique will always win when you finally go to sell it, right?
Sure. Absolutely.
So I just look for something that's unique, something that isn't so that needs so much repair. Um, yeah.
So going in like a little more specifically into this, and I know you and I off air have talked about this, so I'm ready to kind of mention this more. Like, all right, so that's like the general location, right? Is it a college town? Is it near a downtown of some kind? What kind of, um, I guess, like, entertainment, things like that people would be into. They're looking for that. But what more specifically about the property? Like, if you see this property, like, okay, this might be the one, and now I'm going to really dial in and really analyze this too. Is this the one? Like, how closely are you looking at? Like, are you looking at just the area in general? Are you looking at neighbors? Are you looking like what is it that you really, like you have the general area? So I'm the buyer, right? And I'm like, okay, I want to do an Airbnb in this town, right? And so now where do I go from there? That's my city location.
Right.
Now within that city, what should I be looking for? Like really more specifically.
Um, you definitely want to look for an area that you think is on the incline.
Okay.
If it's an area that's on the decline, it probably wouldn't be something you'd be interested in. Um, Long-term renting and short-term renting are two entirely different things. For the short-term rental discussion, obviously, like any purchase of a property, does it have good bones? How
Mm-hmm.
fixable is it?
Yeah.
Do I see something in that property that someone doesn't? That's really the special opportunity when buying a property. And then I think location really, it doesn't really change even with short-term rentals, except you want to identify your customer.
Okay.
Like, am I by a college? Am I by a lake? Am I by a hospital? Can I scoop a ton of we'll say longer short-term rentals that can be traveling nurses, traveling doctors.
Oh, that's a really good one.
Usually, if you're by a hospital or something like that, the property value is probably going to be doing good anyways because everybody wants to be around there. Honestly, schools, one of my biggest groups of business is relocation. I'm in a hot
Hmm.
market where people are trying to relocate, and I often get people who want to rent from me constantly because they're relocating. They want to see the area first, so
Mm-hmm.
they need a nice place to base camp out of, or they're in the middle of a renovation, which I love that customer because they might go, "Hey, I need 2 or 3 months out of your Airbnb. I'm in a renovation." And as long as they, seem to be the kind of customer I want in there, I always go for that because if there's one thing you know about renovations, they never are on time.
I
So
know,
if it's
right?
3 months, it's going to be five. I
They're never in
guarantee it.
budget and they're never on time,
That's
right?
it, exactly. But I would say just the basic principles of wanting to buy a home. You want a good buy for your money. And if you really are trying to rent it out, where can you be creative? You could be in the middle of nowhere, and I still believe you can make your space very. You can make people really want to stay there, but you have to work hard at the other aspects of what I think are important for a successful Airbnb.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And I would think too that some people, people like me in real estate, right? We can see the potential in something quite easily.
Yeah.
If you're thinking about purchasing an Airbnb and maybe you don't have that kind of creative side of the brain, I think it would be good when you go to walk that property and you go to see that to bring someone with you who can maybe see that potential, right?
Yeah.
Whether that be some kind of designer, decorator, whoever, or just someone who maybe has been in the building trade who can say, okay, this is not a load bearing wall. We can open this up, make this better, right, and kind
Yeah.
of do that. So please, everyone, like, don't feel you need to possess all of these skills. There are people who you can bring with you to kind of help you with those different visions,
Yeah.
right? Or it can tell you, like, hey, no, your vision's way too far out, man. They got to dial this back.
Yeah.
But you really, like any business, right? That's part of the due diligence. That's part of the research
Yeah.
as to what kind of property to have. Something that we had talked about earlier that I really like what you said was when you have the new property, you suggested like to live in it for a little bit. Can you kind of go into that? Like we are talking earlier off air,
Yeah.
like to really know like what your customer experience is. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit? I thought that was really great insight.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to step back 1 second to
Okay,
something we were just talking about when
sure.
you're looking at a unit. So the way short-term rentals work too is how many people does it sleep? Short-term rentals like Airbnb, and I tend to use Airbnb as the descriptive for short-term. I think everybody does. They
Yeah.
refer to. So if I
It's
do
kind of
that,
Xerox
that's
for a copy, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Or Kleenex, right? So,
Right.
um, you know, as far as your comment on renovation or looking into, how might I modify this house a bit, it's how many people you sleep. Obviously, you make more money based on how many people you can sleep. You can usually ask for a little bit more. Um,
That makes
I
sense.
I
Okay.
tend to like sleeping four. If I have a really great sofa, I might be able to sleep six. But I think every unit has its sweet spot. So if you're looking at a house that's a one bedroom and you can actually easily, from the advice you get from a friend saying, hey, knock this wall out, you could get two really nice bedrooms here and take out this really weird unused space, then you can look at your unit as, oh, I could now sleep four people.
Mm, got you.
Um, if you have multiple rooms in an Airbnb, I strongly suggest having at least one king bed, and you could always do a queen, sometimes full. But don't get into the trap where you start putting a bunch of bunk beds in. And let's put it this way: a little trick.
All right. All right.
Some people try to get as many people in their unit so they can charge the most. What happens is if the nightly cost of your unit is not high enough, you'll get a bunch of people who will just split the cost and make it a party house.
Oh, good
So you
point.
really sometimes don't want a
Oh,
ton of sleepage in your unit because it could change up who's comes calling.
that's great insight, man. That is yeah.
Learn that one.
Or when you, as you were saying that, the other thing that popped into my mind too is like if you have all these bunk beds and stuff, will you get that traveling baseball team, right? And now you have 15 kids who are dropping their pizza and spilling their pop and right, like
You,
that's where my head went too. Like not necessarily like a party,
yeah.
right? But just
Yep.
yeah, I could see where that could get really out of hand
Yep.
and keeping that up, even like I said, I mean, just the number of people, right? It's
Yep.
just going to require more maintenance, right?
Yep.
So, no, that's really sage advice, man. That's good.
It's kind of a thing we learned. So,
Learn that through experience, eh?
yep. And then you had asked me a question. What I got off.
Yeah. So, like I said, we were talking before off air about perhaps maybe living in the
Oh,
space yourself as the owner. Right.
well, getting into what makes a successful Airbnb truly, if so, you're reading recently that Airbnb is on a decline, right?
Mm.
It seems to be crashing and profiles are dropping off. And I'll just say where we live in our area, we live on a lake and we have a beautiful county that we live in. And when I started off, I watched the number of Airbnbs increase in a year and a half by 300%.
Whoa,
So that's a lot of action. It's
lot
a
of
lot of
competition.
competition.
Yeah.
I think what happens is people go into an Airbnb thinking that it's actually simple, or what could be involved in that.
Mm.
What they have to realize with the Airbnb and VRBO platforms is the 5-star rating, like a lot of other things, is absolutely essential. If you're not a 5-star rating, the way you get searched on these platforms is totally different. It's almost penalized.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Okay.
I could have a beautiful, best Airbnb, in my opinion, in my whole area, but if for some reason I'm not at 5.0 and other people are, they'll search ahead of me.
Ooh.
There's all kinds of things you really got to, it's like any software, you got to know the software. Airbnb and VRBO are a little different. And one of the biggest tips I could give people getting into the short term business is you have to do Airbnb and VRBO.
Ooh.
A lot of people will only do Airbnb. The only thing I can
Okay.
equate this to, especially where I live in Texas, is that a lot of people look at, I would equate it to coffee drinking. It's a difference between, and to me, there's not really a difference,
Right.
so to speak, but
Right.
it'd be the difference between drinking Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks, only from a cultural point of view, not a
Ah,
quality of coffee point of view.
interesting. All right.
Some people will not touch Airbnb because they see it as the snooty site. All young
Uh,
people,
uh,
won't touch VRBO, but you will get a majority of the
huh.
a different demographic will totally hit VRBO. And I find that I get 50-50 bookings from those two.
Interesting.
And a lot of people I just watch not getting the bookings because they're not on both. Now a lot of people won't do it because sometimes the calendars don't sync up. They're supposed to.
Okay.
So every day we actually go look at our calendars to make sure our calendars are always synced up. And if I do a booking in one, I have to make sure that I put the booking in the other one.
Mm.
There's all these other sites, Expedia and Travelocity. They all, like, I think Airbnb falls under a couple of those, but some of those will charge you as high as 15%. So I
Gotcha.
figure a little elbow grease, a little work, plus those two platforms is a really good start to getting your short term uh, business going. The goal is to use those sites to get these people originally and then have them book with you, not on those sites ever again. Because two things happen. One is I can offer them a better price because I'm taking all of those fees off.
Oh yeah, the overhead.
It
That's
does
right.
require you to have your own contract, but I also feel that our personal contracts are way more thorough than Airbnb and VRBO contracts are,
Yeah,
especially.
because those are like a template, right? Pretty much
They
like.
are, and they cover quite a bit. They
Oh yeah,
cover quite a
yeah,
bit.
I'm sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, that's very interesting too. That's
Well,
right. And you know what else? As you were saying that too is about the third party sites or the aggregate sites, right? Is that was interesting because when I put up new listing, I'm making sure that Zillow, Realtor.com, Trulia, right? I'm double checking those
oh yeah,
because the MLS, which is like the true listing, right, is feeding those sites, and sometimes those sites are wrong.
yeah,
I've had it where they've not only because they also draw from public record and doesn't get too far into a tangent here, but county public records are not always accurate, right?
mm,
Which is why we visit people when we list your home, right, to see what your home really is, right?
yeah,
But
exactly.
not to get into that, but when a new listing goes up for me, I am checking those other sites, just like you. Is like there was a week where I won't say which one, but one of those sites they were throwing vertical pictures sideways, right? And so you had like a vertical half bath pic, boom, on its side. And I'm like, oh my goodness, I got to go in there and like correct it, right?
Mhm.
Call somebody, right? And it's that kind of stuff, right? It's that
Yep,
kind of quality control, I guess,
yep.
right? Checking out where other people are going to see that and checking that out. So that was funny how as you were saying that, I was relating that to my own real estate business. Like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So my question is, what is it that you need to do to maintain that 5-star rating? Or what is, if you could give me the most important thing to hit that 5-star? We'll talk about others, but what
Yep.
would be the singular most important thing to be?
So I'm gonna circle back around
Okay, all right.
to where you to where I
I love it.
started, I tend to get a little off track because
That's
there's
right.
so much to talk about, really. But the reason I saw all that saturation with all these people, and the
Hmm.
reason why Airbnb is hurting now is because all those people are dropping off because they realize what it takes
Uh,
to actually do a successful Airbnb.
got it.
So I wouldn't say Airbnbs are crashing. I would say that the people that thought it was a lot easier than it was are crashing because to get the 5 star consistently, and everyone's heard of Superhost or
Hmm.
that, once you have a certain amount of time being a 5.0, you get a better status as a host.
Oh, okay. All
And
right.
then your searchability even goes up further. But these sites are always working on searchability. Some people love me because we are one of the few Airbnbs that actually allow dogs.
Mm.
And we clean to such a spec that even people with allergies don't even know it when they come in. And that's a whole other philosophy around that. All right, your question.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's great. So to maintain or to get to, if you're new, that 5 star rating, what is probably give me like the top three most important things or priorities to hit or maintain that 5 star rating?
Clean communication and consistency.
Hey, so going to clean. And what am I just vacuuming? Like wiping down countertops? Like what am I? Is this just normal
Yeah.
housekeeping stuff, or is this?
So, how do I say this? We have always been focused on clean. I would even go so far as to say forensically clean.
Hmm.
We Most of our reviews have the word clean in it. And I honestly, when I first started this, my philosophy was you can have an older place. You can have, might not be as modernized or anything, but if that place is truly spotless, no one can really be upset with that.
Hmm.
If you communicate great with them as a great host, with any challenges or problems they might have, or quick questions about where to eat or anything like that, that works great. And then just be consistent at it. Some hosts are great getting you in there, and then, you don't actually hear from them when you have a question. And this is one of the reasons why we actually hired a full time hostess, especially with multiple Airbnbs.
I was just going to ask you about that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So, as far as our level of clean, we take it to a very high standard. We clean with actual blue lights.
Ooh.
Amongst the obvious thing a blue light will reveal, it will also show you dust. Blue lights
Yeah.
will show dust, and you can buy them for $20. I keep a stack of them for the staff. But when we clean, we're top to bottom. We pull beds out, we wipe baseboards, we change everything. If they didn't use a towel, it doesn't matter because you
Gotcha.
don't know.
You never know,
You
man. You
can't
never know.
trust
Oh
that
yeah.
ever.
Yeah.
I want the peace of mind of knowing when somebody goes into my place, I can look at them and say, "Oh, this place is clean," right? To the point where we actually had a customer come in there. She says, I booked here out of the other places because all it said was clean and I wanted to know for myself, whatever that.
Woo.
And come to
Oh,
find out, we got the white glove baseboard test and
whoa.
we passed wonderfully.
Well, I'm telling you, man, that
Clean wins. You trust
clean
clean.
wins. Yeah, you trust clean. I love that. That is so so true.
First
Like,
impressions when you walk into a unit are everything. We
uh,
have inside of our clean standard, we really have a checklist for everything. We do bed bug inspections
mhm.
almost monthly, which is probably a bit overkill. Just it's great. I have a friend in that space. You'll hear horror stories where people will actually bring in a bed bug
Oy.
and they'll say, "Oh, there's a bed bug in here," but based on your last inspection of no bed bugs, you can say that bed bug is literally that old at that size, and there's no way that bed bug could ever have originated from here.
Oh,
So
nice.
that's one of the.
I like that.
But at the end of the day, people just like to know that. They just like to know
Sure.
their place is clean. We go one step further too as we scan for cameras. We have one of those little eye devices that allow you to go around the room. And
Oh,
now normally I would use that if I'm staying at a place. place, but
Right.
because our place turns over so fast, it would be very difficult for someone to install those things. So we do that just as a courtesy. We checklist off everything. So if there's ever a question, I can literally say, I can show whatever, all the rooms that I checklist, both, bed bugs, for cameras, for, blue flashlight, everything. We clean to the same spec every time, which brings up a really great thing. How often do you go to an Airbnb and the checkout rules are like a mile long? Turn the air to here, do this, do that, throw this here, do that, strip the beds, all of that.
Right.
I find the less people have to do coming and going is really the trick. And since I
Ah.
clean to the same deep spec, our rules of leaving an Airbnb is lock the door.
Huh.
lock the door. And I also find that when you walk in the door and you have, I mean, we're as specific as the smell. The rules are no food, no hair, and no smells. So when we clean that rigidly, the nightmare I think most Airbnb hosts have is when you walk into your unit, you have a 4-hour flip and it smells like they just cooked bacon and fried chicken.
Oh yeah.
And
I didn't think about that. You're right.
and that's great. You want
Right.
people to enjoy themselves if it's their home. So we
Huh.
have tricks for all of that. One trick to get smell out of a rental is turn off your HVAC, turn
Mhm.
off all the ceiling fans, open all the doors, and boil a big pot of water full of white vinegar till the
Hmm.
house is literally rainforest thick and smelling like vinegar. And I always put a little essential oil in that. And then once you reach that kind of thickness, and this is during a clean, especially if you got to be up and running in 4 hours
Yeah.
for your next customer, and then you turn on the HVAC, super like turn on that air, suck up all that, absorb all that moisture.
Yeah.
And while we clean, we have a candle that we vetted forever. We look for the right candle. So we'll clean with 6 or 7 candles in every room.
Right.
That also adds to this final essence when you walk in the door, not
Gotcha.
perfumey or anything like that.
Yeah.
But I find that when people walk in the door, there's music playing. YouTube. The one account that I leave signed in on all of our smart TVs is YouTube.
Okay.
It allows me to put a music mix on there. You know those beautiful little ocean scenes and all the
Right.
fish, and they got that cool,
Yeah.
right? So I turn that up just loud enough so when you walk in, you get the feel. I turn on almost every light in the house, dim them just the right way depending on when they're walking in the door. They walk in, they really, truly, clean when you walk in the door.
Absolutely. For
And
sure.
then that nice clean scent. And I find that that first impression is everything. I also find that the cleaner you are, the more clean people will leave it. I have guests
Yeah.
apologize to me for not being as clean, and I'm like, this place was super clean. I'm like, I'm not necessarily asking people to be clean. I'm asking them to be reasonable, like
Right.
anybody would.
Right. Yeah. No. No. That's a really good point. And you know what? It's funny. Like I said, is as you're talking about this, I'm thinking about where I'm buying and selling homes right on a real estate level. And you're right. When you open that front door, that you only get a chance to make that first impression once,
Yep.
right? Or as Miles Davis said, you only get a chance to say I love you once. That's why he recorded one take, right?
Oh, that's right.
And so
Connection.
that's so important. And one thing, and I'm really glad that you addressed, not having strong odors in the house, because one of my biggest pet peeves, and I talked about this in an open house episode, are those plug-in Glade air fresheners and those super strong candles. Like it makes the air oily, right? And
Yeah.
I can't. One, I just personally can't stand it. It's
Yep.
like because it's like on me,
Yep.
right? And then secondly, if you go too strong with the air fresheners, people get suspicious. That the first thing, like when we go into a house, I take a buyer in the house and they got those air fresheners going. The first thing they do is they look at me and be like, "What's the seller hiding
Mm.
with this candle? Right? Why does it smell so flowery in here?
Right.
What's going on?" And then they start looking for.
Oh, sure.
So, and there could be nothing there,
Yep.
right? So I'm very encouraged that we're not throwing up all those scented candles because I can't stand those things. I'll go
Yeah.
on a showing, I'll get in the car, and a half hour later, it's on my clothes in my car.
Oh yeah.
Like, oh,
Well, scent, it's very scent is a very interesting thing to a lot of people, right? What's good for one person might be, you know, make my eyes water for somebody else.
true. Yeah.
So I find just being very as neutral as possible. That I guess you're going for what you would consider a clean smell. Beside the fact, when we mop our floors, we put such a hot, burning mix of stuff that it just really, really just takes all smells out of the house. Going, as far as maintenancing. Oh, you asked me about. You don't know what kind of place you have till you live there yourself.
Yeah.
I want to go back to that. You had
Yeah.
asked that.
Yeah. Please.
You'd be surprised. You think you have everything set up till you actually spend a couple nights in your own place, and then you
Hmm.
realize, wow, my blackout curtains don't exactly black out as much as I would really want them to, right? Or my I get this little rattle in the HVAC vent because there's a little something bouncing around up in there. I'm staying in an Airbnb now, and the air goes on. It's a beautiful place, but the air goes on. There's just something with the vent. It's like it's like just enough to like make you kind of wake up, and um, what are your neighbors up to? All of that. You just, car lights in the parking lot if you have a room that's next to a parking lot. Just knowing your space is super important. Um, I think blackout curtains are one of the greatest things I've ever done. If people don't want to be blacked out, they'll leave the curtains open and leave the
Sure.
Venetian blinds down. But most people like it really uh, blackened in their room, and quiet is great. We do a lot of extras. We do a noise machine for sleeping. Some people just love the sound of that little ocean, just those
Oh, okay. So you
little
just provide that.
devices.
You
I can
just
do
have it.
music bells,
Huh.
or we usually leave wireless little Bose speakers in each room. So if people want to listen to their own music, they can.
All right.
Another big trick was weighted blankets.
Oh, I love
Every
weighted
room has a
blankets,
weighted
man.
blanket,
Oh,
right?
that's a nice touch.
It's a
I
great
like
touch. We
that.
even have one for the couch as well. And I find that people just love those extra touches. But don't chintz. I think when people buy an Airbnb and they want to flip it, they might go to a resale shop and buy a bed and all of that. But honestly, these are where this place is where people are sleeping.
Hmm.
They want to sleep.
Right.
So again, how do you reach the masses in general? You can't make everybody happy. So you
True.
try to grab the best of that middle ground. And with our beds, I would say a big part of our investment was the beds. I think if your bed isn't and your linens aren't coming to $5,000-6,000, you know, let's just put it this way: if you invest into those things, the best thing they can have is a good sleep.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point because we were on vacation once. Where were we? I think it was uh, Kentucky. I think it was Lexington, and we were staying in a hotel, and they had Tempur-Pedic
Mm.
mattresses, and that's the first time that my wife Kim and I that we slept on one of those. And let me tell you, man, it was the best night of sleep of my life. And I'm like, if I'm ever in this town again, I am coming here. And that is such a true statement. And guess
Okay.
what? When our mattress wore out later, like 6 months later, we're looking for a new mattress anyway. Guess what we bought? We bought that.
Right?
Right.
You're listening to the Bryan G
Yeah.
Real Estate
So
Podcast.
yeah.
If
Funny
you'd
you
like to
say
learn
that.
more
We
about
worked out
me,
a deal
check out
with,
my
our
YouTube channel,
mattress
Brian Gutierrez,
manufacturers.
Keller Williams Real Estate,
If you
or
give us a-
go to my Facebook
we're
page,
really
Brian
trying to build
Gutierrez,
this
Keller
company into
Williams.
multiple
And if you want to hear
Airbnbs,
more of this
gonna go
podcast,
totally high-end
please
on
subscribe.
mattresses,
Now back
show
to the
us what
show.
you got. We came to a conclusion, and we're so confident in what we're doing. We have a feeling people are going to want to know what they're sleeping on.
Yeah.
So if we send them to you, can you drop ship mattresses anywhere around the country for the people visiting us? And he's
Yeah.
like, absolutely.
Nice.
So we've actually done about 12 to 20 bed deals.
Wow.
We actually had a return customer who loved the bed so much they asked if their father, who was coming out of surgery, if he could literally recuperate at our Airbnb because it was
Wow.
that peaceful to them in the sleeping. And so we're ready for
Whoa.
everything.
Wow.
All mattresses have mattress covers. So in this case, for this gentleman, we put a full-blown rubber cover on it just in case there was any issues with, his post-surgery stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really about the customized stay. Interesting statistic is that I've never seen it in any other business, but with the Airbnb business, if someone has a quote solid experience, there's a 90% possibility of rebooking.
Wow.
Just like you said, that
Ooh.
bed, you're back.
Yeah.
You even bought the bed.
It's true. Yeah.
So it's really an interesting statistic, and I find that once they have a great experience with you, uh, they're coming back and they're going to tell their family. I can't tell. Return business, you put in that effort up front, and then in a couple years when that return business starts to hit,
Right.
you get the people wanting to come back every Christmas because they love that. And you definitely charge premiums for high holidays, right?
Sure.
But honestly, that return business is everything.
And you know what? I think that's true in any business,
Any
obviously in
business.
my industry too. But and I think that kind of goes back to what you had mentioned before about communicating, right? And I see what you guys are doing at a very high level is when not only what expectations are when people move in, and you're explaining that very well, but also fulfilling those needs and communicating with your short-term tenants.
Yep.
And I think that attention to detail is extremely important. That, to me, when I'm traveling, that is super important. You're right. Cleanliness is everything. I went to a, a real estate convention in, where was it? Orlando.
Hmm.
And so we had this hotel. It was all right. And it wasn't a 4-star hotel. It was average.
Mm-hmm.
I went in there and it had the gray wood looking like laminate floors, right? Which are fine. I mean, it's a hotel, right? So I remember I go in and I clean up, I come out, and I'm just walking around in my socks, and just going on my laptop. And I went to the refrigerator, got a little popped a drink, and came back, and I'm just doing some work. And then I happened to sit down and like cross my legs watching TV, and the bottom of my socks were black. It was gross, man. I'm like,
yeah.
what? I mean, the feeling that came over me was like,
Yeah.
oh, like, and then I'm like, do I want to get in that bed in a minute? Right. And then I'm like, what's in the bathroom? Like your mind just starts going. And,
yeah.
and also obviously that I'm like, all right, I'm here for like 2 nights. I'm never coming back to this place again. Right.
And it's sad too, right? When that happens.
Oh,
it's like,
man. Like,
I mean, you really do start questioning everything.
well, then the lights come off and you're trying to sleep. And you're like, what can I not see right now? What's all around me? What's going on? Right?
That's great. That's a good point too. This is why we never do carpeting. If you were going to start revising a house for Airbnbs or short-term rentals, I would probably take out all the carpet.
Good point.
You have to understand too, if your Airbnb is super hot, and for most of us, that's the summer months, right?
Mm-hmm.
And for a lot of us, the minute someone checks out at 11, I've got a 3 p.m. coming in.
Oh, gotcha.
I have to double my cleaning staff to reach my level of cleaning standards.
Aye.
And then, you got to get them smells out. You got to get things clean. Imagine getting a stain in a carpet. How do you fix that and dry that and have that perfectly working in 4 hours?
Good point. And then what if you get a stain that you can't get out?
Right. So we use a series of rugs on wood and combination tile floors, and they're called ruggables. And ruggables are washable rugs.
Ah.
They come with a rubber underlayment so they don't slide around, but they peel right off like a Velcro. And I don't care how big that rug is, 12 by 9, you can literally throw that in your washing machine.
Really?
Wash it delicately and dry it delicately. And you can wash every rug in your unit in time for your next turn. It's a standard for us to wash them anyways. I have 2 or 3 versions of everything in a unit anyway.
Right.
So if I get any kind of colossal emergency, I can just replace stuff and deal with it later.
Right. Yeah.
So same with the rugs. I got double rugs. I got triple linens. I got double pillows. I got you know, if you're really in it to win it, you
Well,
got to be
it's
in it to win it.
well, yeah,
Right?
and it's all that uh, preparation in advance
Yep.
that you need. Have plan A, B, and C, right? Have those redundant
Oh
systems.
yeah.
So when you're in a jam like that in a short term, like what do we do? You don't have to. I don't have to wash this and dry this and put it back in its place because they have a duplicate, right?
Yep.
So pop the dupe in there, and then that
Yep.
gives you time to, at your pace, clean those other things for the next
Yep.
tenant that comes in. Yeah, and so I guess like one of the ahas that I'm getting from this is that you really need to really plan ahead, and I guess try and anticipate different scenarios, right? I'm like yeah.
You
Can talk about that a little bit?
you will always do your best to plan for those,
Mm-hmm.
but it's that everyday life of an Airbnb that will add to your list of realities. Guarantee it. Things you never thought about, like, oh wow. And the minute that happens, you add that to your process, your checkoff list, whatever.
Yeah.
You make sure you're ready for it. And nothing's more satisfying than that exact thing happening. And you're like, wham, done. As long as that
Yes.
customer has no idea what's going on, they just want to roll in there, feel good about it the minute they do, know that they're handled, and that's it. You know, customer service is everything when you're a host in this business.
Oh, I bet.
We had a very high paying customer. They were wanting it. They wanted a special deal for a time frame. I had to charge them a lot more than normal. They were good with it, but they on Christmas Day could not get it. I think it was Paramount Plus. They couldn't get it on the smart TV for some reason.
Hmm.
And so on Christmas Day, we rolled up in there, got them their app loaded real quick, and that meant so much to them. One is they couldn't believe we showed up on Christmas. Like, we know you're
Right?
great at what you do, but dang, you showed up on Christmas for reals. Like, the husband was like, honey, don't worry about that. She
Right.
had to have whatever show she had to see. I
Right.
think it was a game. I wasn't sure.
Right.
So anyways, we went in there, did that, and they wound up booking with us for years.
Nice.
I think it was because of the that experience. And then, I mean, we could talk so much about the hosting side of it as well.
Actually, I did want to ask you about that. So now, in your case, you have multiple properties, right?
I do.
So do you, as the short term rental owner of your business and of your properties, do you do all the hosting yourself, or do you hire help with that, or
So
what do you recommend for that to be?
I would say if I had a smaller number of units and I was really in my golden years, right, and I had time to go over there and like,
Putz
there's a
around and like
great Airbnb here in this town. What you had actually suggested that Airbnb? What was I forget where she was. She always has the flowers waiting for you.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. I know her. Yep.
Right. So you know that she lives nearby. It's great if you have an Airbnb nearby you, and if you're the one managing it. Instead, we had multiple Airbnbs, and so we hired an amazing woman who my wife and I had a lot of personal experience with her, and we realized everyone just loves her. But she'd walk into a room, and that's it. So we're like, hey, would you be interested? And she's like, yes, because my job is horrible and I would love to do this for you guys.
Oh, great.
And she came with so many other skills, but amongst that was her people skills. And as the owner, it was important for me to know your own business. I will not hand over anything unless I'm intimate with it.
Right.
So if somebody is not able to do it, I can walk in and do it. I don't want to be the dumb owner who doesn't know anything.
Right. Absolutely.
The biggest word I've got for Airbnbs is process. The minute you walk in the door to clean it, what's the process? What are the checklists? How you receive a customer is its own process. How you get your laundry handled is a process. So we're just a giant book of processes, but once you get them down, you're great. Anyways, our hostess, who people love, is so good at understanding why somebody wants to rent with us, which to me is the game, because it allows you to upsell carefully, but really it's to bring additional value to the stay, which usually results in some kind of upsell. Now, our Airbnb is
Gotcha.
on the lake, and we had downtime during the winter,
Hmm.
and we wound up getting a tri-tune boat that on our particular lake, the best fishing is winter, the coldest days.
Okay, and
And
you're down south.
yep.
Yeah, just for those of
Oh
you,
yeah, we don't get
yeah,
frozen lakes.
you aren't up here in Michigan
Thank
doing
you.
that, right? Yeah.
Yep. So the boat was really a major play for us. Kim Ann, which was her name, she really says, Dave, you know, if you took this boat concept, one is we could fill up our winters full of really cool people wanting to do some of the more recreational fishing and other things on the boat because we happen to be really good fisher peoples.
Hmm.
But also, what would it mean to understand that you have an anniversary walking in the door? More specifically, you have the parents of a couple getting married at the yacht club just down the
Uh-huh.
street.
Oh, nice.
And do you take the bridal party out on the boat and take them around the island and the lake the day after they had their big dinner and they're getting ready, or post, you know, or do you just take the parents out because they're paying for everything?
Right.
And so normally I would only do a 2-day booking
Hmm.
because it wouldn't be cost effective to do a 1 day once you do the cleaning and everything else.
Gotcha.
But what would it mean to take out a real serious fishing party at $1,200 for a night trip and have them book 1 day? I just literally made so much more. Like
Huh.
I can do the single day booking and still have this other surplus of money, which would make that very, possible.
And you're doing that by providing
Yep.
stellar service,
Yep.
right? Another feature
Right.
to what you already offer.
Someone's
So,
on an anniversary, we'll take them. We'll negotiate a dinner on one of the restaurants on the lake, and then when they come back, the whole unit is done up in candles and lights and everything. I mean, you got to get custom with it. If you hear words like people booking with you that use the words like overflow, overflow is a very scary word
Yeah.
because it means somebody's event and they want to put like all their kids in your unit because they're staying at their home or Airbnb just down the street.
Right.
And you have to be really careful. I would say if you got a bad feeling about a booking,
Yeah.
the answer is we're unable to, facilitate that booking.
Mm.
Super important to be able to say no, which leads me to one of the most important things ever in booking on Airbnb. Do not choose the option automatic booking.
Oh, gotcha.
This is where someone can go, oh my God, I want that. Boom, they do it and they're in. You want it so that they say, I would like this. There creates this inquiry option
Right.
to where we can ask a few questions and find out exactly why they're coming. And it's really all about your gut. But
Yeah, and really, I mean, really, it's no, I just feel that's a better process anyway because if you want to provide the high level of service, being able to communicate with them, like I said, is it a newlywed couple on vacation? Is it a family reunion? Is somebody going to want the fishing experience or not? Right? I mean, that really kind of makes sense to me rather than just an automatic booking, is it allows you to tailor and customize those different features that you guys offer. You can actually, you can up the level of service, right, and offer more features and benefits to
yep,
to the renter, right?
we
So,
always have a handwritten card and a beautiful card,
mm,
like a card they're like, wow, this is a real deal card.
mm,
And we always have flowers.
nice.
We have a deal with our florist, and we have fresh flowers every time. And the flowering card is just such a great invite. We have a beautiful leather book with the whatever minimal instructions we have. It's pretty much more or less what's around, what you can do, things to look into while you're here. And we worked with an artist on Etsy who took the map of where we're at.
Mm,
So we're on this peninsula on Lake Conroe,
okay.
and it was a leather pressed image on a leather binder
Oh, nice.
of
Oh,
the
the lake.
right
Oh,
with
nice.
in this case we would put a little star where we were on
Ah,
that.
nice.
Really nice touch. And then
Right
you
on.
always, if you really really want great ways of hearing from your customers, is the other leather book, which was the pressed photo on leather of the view.
Oh,
And
nice.
that was the book that people would say, I love the unit. My family and I had such a good time. Like they can leave their little,
Nice.
and people just love reading that when they come into
Oh yeah, for sure.
yeah. So just there's nothing too small a detail in an Airbnb,
Mm-hmm.
and you just have to be excellent because it all comes down in this game to that 5-star review. The
Gotcha.
minute you're not a 5-star, and I mean it is the most fragile razor's edge to ride. Is the 5. That's why if
Interesting.
you think you have a real problem customer, like you can tell by maybe the way they ask you the questions
Mm-hmm.
during that kind of dating period, and you're like, wow, I really feel this person's going to be difficult. If you didn't have the 5-star review, you might not be so as discerning, but at the end of the day, you got to protect your property.
Sure, and you have to protect your property and which is protecting your business,
Yep.
right? Absolutely. Well, man, this has been a wonderful discussion. I am so glad that you were free to do this. I really am. Do you have any kind of like parting thoughts on this whole process?
The short term, if you're getting into properties, renting of any sort, whether it's short term or long term, is a great way to make your asset work for you
Mm-hmm.
while you're deciding what you're going to do with it long term.
Mm-hmm.
And 5 years is not long term to me, right?
Right.
Long term is much longer. So if you buy in a hot market, you want to put some renters in there for now, you really got to commit to having an excellent experience. You'll make more money, you'll pay down that asset, value goes up, and when you're ready to turn that asset, you'll be great. And also consider this: many times when I actually sold a few of my Airbnbs. I didn't just sell them as a property that was in great shape because I whipped them into shape, right?
Mm-hmm.
I sold them as an operation.
Oh, yes.
Your profile's already up. You've
Gotcha.
got dozens of 5-star reviews. All you got to do is buy this property, and sometimes it will definitely get you the extra dollar. When
Great.
the dollar don't make sense.
So, yeah. So once again, man, thank you so much for doing this.
You're welcome.
This has been so great. I think this kind of information is just going to be really useful, really helpful for a lot of people. And just like any other business, you have to be diligent, you have to be honest, you have to provide premium level of service, you have
Be
to
excellent.
communicate. What's that?
Be excellent.
Be excellent. Absolutely. And I think you guys are doing a great job at doing just that. So anyway, hey, thanks again, man. It's
You're
great to have
welcome.
you on. It's good to be my older brother. This is great, man. And all right. And we'll be down to see you guys and probably staying in one of your Airbnbs. So anyway, thanks a lot, Dave. I appreciate it, man.